A seemingly ordinary morning at the federal court in New York. A woman of color, dressed neatly, strides through the security gates, carrying important documents for what should have been a landmark day. But no one could have imagined that right at the place symbolizing justice, she would be stopped, humiliated, and belittled simply because of the color of her skin and the weight of old prejudices. What seemed like a minor confrontation spiraled into a series of events shaking the very foundation of the system, exposing hidden shadows never seen before. Who is this woman? Why did she become the center of a storm? Let's dive into a story that no one ever expected. Early in the morning, as the sky over Manhattan was still cloaked in dawn's dim light, Angela Carter briskly made her way toward the Southern District of New York Federal Courthouse. Clutching a briefcase tightly in her hand, her heart fluttered with both excitement and nerves. Today marked her first day as a federal judge at this prestigious court, one of the few Black women to earn such an honor. Years of dedication in the legal field, overcoming countless barriers, had brought her to this point. The mere thought of soon sitting on the bench, wielding the scales of justice, filled Angela with pride and determination. Crossing the small plaza in front of the entrance, Angela took a deep breath. The cool morning air mixed with the faint aroma of coffee from a nearby street cafe helped sharpen her senses. She wore a neatly tailored black suit, a modest string of pearls at her neck, exuding professionalism without ostentation. She wanted to make an impression with her competence and commitment, not with flashy appearances. Inside her briefcase lay the black judge's robe, the symbol of judicial authority, neatly folded. With each step closer to the courthouse, her heart beat faster. "Everything will be fine," she reassured herself. "I've prepared for this day my whole life." Ahead of her, a line of people was filing through the main entrance's security checkpoint. Court staff, attorneys, journalists, and citizens alike paused for screening before entering. Angela joined the line with a gentle smile. A few lawyers nearby turned to offer polite nods, perhaps thinking she was a fellow attorney. She responded with a friendly nod of her own. Despite the excitement stirring inside, she maintained an outward calm. "Don't let the nerves show," she silently reminded herself. When it was her turn at the metal detector, Angela placed her briefcase on the X-ray scanner belt like everyone else. A soft beep sounded as the gate scanned her. Suddenly, a cold male voice barked out, "Hold it." Lady Angela startled and looked up. Before her stood a tall, burly middle-aged white man in a dark blue security uniform. His name badge read, J. Evans. His eyes scanned Angela suspiciously, his expression excessively stern. Arms crossed, he blocked her path. "What's the matter?" Angela asked, striving to keep her voice calm. Evans narrowed his eyes, sweeping his gaze up and down her. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone brusque. Angela was momentarily taken aback by his rudeness. "I'm an employee here at the court," she replied, not wanting to cause a scene. "Here's my employee ID." She calmly took out her newly issued ID card from her wallet, showing a portrait photo and the name Angela Carter, federal judge. Evans snatched the card, glanced at it perfunctorily, then sneered. "A federal judge. You." He let out a mocking laugh, his eyes betraying skepticism and contempt. A chill ran down Angela's spine, but she kept her composure. "Yes, I'm Angela Carter, the newly appointed judge. Today is my first day here." Evans returned the card roughly, almost tossing it into her hand. "You think I'm easy to fool." His voice turned sharp. "Nice fake ID, but you're not fooling me." Angela was stunned. "Excuse me, This ID was issued by the court. It's perfectly valid. If you don't believe me, you can call someone in charge to confirm. No need. Evans cut her off, stepping closer, forcing Angela to take a step back. A few people waiting behind started glancing curiously at the scene. Where'd you get this ID? Probably stole it from someone. Huh. Angela's heart clenched with indignation. Never had she imagined being so brazenly accused and humiliated in a public place of law. I didn't steal anything, she managed to say, controlling her voice to keep from breaking. This is my ID. I demand you show me some respect. Respect? Evans interrupted with a scornful laugh. Do you even know where you are? This is a federal courthouse, not some marketplace you can just stroll into. Stop pretending. He glanced at Angela's brown skin, a flicker of disdain crossing his face. Someone like you, a judge? That's laughable. Angela's cheeks burned. She recognized that look of prejudice, the dismissive glare she had seen so many times in her life. From a young age, she had grown accustomed to skeptical glances whenever she stepped into elegant spaces, to whispers when she excelled. But being publicly insulted right at the courthouse where she worked was unbearable. You have no right to treat me this way, Angela said, her voice firm. I demand to speak with your supervisor immediately. Evans smirked, stepping closer until Angela could hear his hostile breathing. Who do you think you are to demand that I've seen plenty of imposters? Just because you're wearing a suit and pearls doesn't make you royalty. He jabbed a finger at her face. If you don't want to be arrested for impersonating a federal employee, then get lost. Right now, Angela was speechless at his threat. She couldn't believe that from a poised federal judge. She was being driven away like a criminal. Anger surged through her, mingling with a choking sense of humiliation. She forced herself to breathe, holding back tears or an outburst. With her position, she had to act with decorum. Angela swallowed hard, her voice slow and controlled. I suggest you think carefully about your actions. You are insulting a federal judge. This behavior could cost you your job? Evan's eyes widened. Then he burst out laughing as though he'd just heard the funniest thing in the world. A judge. You? He rolled his eyes and suddenly snatched Angela's briefcase from her hands. Hey, what are you doing? Angela cried out. Evans didn't answer. He rudely rummaged through her briefcase. Inside were personal files, some legal documents, and the neatly folded black judge's robe. He pulled out the robe, shook it, and threw it onto the floor. The solemn black fabric lay crumpled on the cold tile. Angela's heart clenched as she saw the sacred symbol of her profession treated like trash. Around her, a few onlookers gasped in shock. Another security guard nearby appeared uneasy, but didn't dare intervene. Thought it was real. Huh? Evans growled, his face flushed. Got the props and everything? Fake. He stooped to pick up the robe like it was evidence, then suddenly flung it at Angela. The robe struck her chest, causing her to stagger back a step. She bit her lip until it bled, suppressing a sob of frustration. Clutching the robe, she glared at Evans. You're despicable. Despicable. I'm just doing my job protecting the court from imposters. Evans shouted, making sure everyone heard. A few curious onlookers began gathering, whispering, shaking their heads in disapproval. Angela's eyes stung, but amid the surrounding stares, she refused to crumble. She stood tall, smoothed her suit, and lifted her chin. I will report this behavior. You will be held accountable. Evans advanced, suddenly gripping Angela's arm so tightly it hurt. Enough. You think you can scare me? He snarled, Come with me. Before Angela could react, Evans dragged her roughly to a corner of the lobby where a table stood. He forced her into a chair and spoke into his radio. I need backup at the main entrance. We've got a suspect impersonating court staff refusing to cooperate. A suspect. He called her a suspect. Angela was speechless. She sat there, feeling all eyes upon her. The humiliation overwhelmed her as she imagined the bystanders surely thinking she was some criminal, a federal judge who should have been respected, now treated like a petty offender in her own workplace. While waiting for reinforcements, Evans stood over Angela, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on her with a defiant challenge. She clenched her fists to stop trembling. I can't cry. I can't show weakness, she told herself, though her heart ached. Soon, 2 other security officers rushed over. One appeared to be a superior, his hair gray and his expression concerned. What's going on here? Evans? He asked quickly. Evans gestured at Angela. This person is impersonating a federal judge trying to sneak into the court. I'm holding her for verification. The superior frowned, turning to Angela. Ma'am, do you have any other form of identification? Angela pressed her lips together and handed over her ID card and an official appointment letter with a red seal. I've told you repeatedly. I'm Angela Carter, the new judge for this court. These documents prove it. Her voice trembled with pent-up indignation. The supervisor scanned the documents, his face suddenly shifting to shock. He stared at the photo on the card, then back at Angela, as if unable to believe his eyes. My God, this is Judge Carter, he stammered. Evans recoiled, grabbing the papers from his superior's hand. His eyes darted over the documents, and his face turned pale. No way! Evans, the supervisor, snapped, now understanding the situation. Let her go immediately. Evans hastily released Angela's arm, stepping back. He stared at her, his mouth working but no words coming out. Angela stood, steadying herself. The supervisor bowed his head toward her, his voice filled with regret. Judge Carter, I sincerely apologize. This was a grave misunderstanding. Angela took a deep breath, holding back the tears. She stared straight at Evans, now sweating, his face full of confusion and fear. On the floor, scattered papers and items from her briefcase lay strewn. The judge's robe remained rumpled on a nearby chair, dirtied. In that moment, humiliation and fury welled up within her. But Angela's voice remained astoundingly calm. You're the head of security here, she asked the gray-haired man. Yes, I'm Richard Moore, the chief of Courthouse security, he replied hastily. I deeply apologize for this. Judge Carter, I assure you our staff will be disciplined accordingly. Angela was silent for a moment, then gave a small nod. She bent down to pick up her judge's robe, gently brushing the dust from the black fabric. The slow, deliberate motion made Evans hold his breath. Perhaps he was waiting for her wrath. But Angela only straightened, her gaze cold and somber, locking onto Evans. Your name is Evans, isn't it? Evans stammered. Yes, I'll see you again, Angela said, her tone strangely calm but carrying unmistakable resolve. Her words made Evans pale. Then Angela turned to Moore. I have a court session to preside over. Please escort me to my office. We'll deal with this later. Yes, Judge, Moore said respectfully. He cast a quick glance at Evans, his look filled with disappointment and anger. Evans, stay here. I'll be back to speak with you. Evans hung his head, speechless. Around them, the spectators began dispersing, their murmurs fading. Angela stood tall, readjusted her suit, and grasped her briefcase firmly. She walked with Moore through the security gate, her head held high. The small figure of a black woman advancing toward the elevator left behind the stunned gaze of the racist security guard. Inside Angela, the sting of humiliation lingered like a fresh wound, but amidst it burned a growing flame of determination. She vowed to herself this insult would not be forgotten. Justice would be served, right here in the very place that was supposed to symbolize justice. What do you think about Angela's experience? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective now. Let's continue with the story. Angela hurried after Mr. Moore through the marble-floored corridors leading to the courtroom area. Along the way, Mr. Moore repeatedly apologized, explaining that this was an unexpected mishap. Angela remained silent. She didn't want to hear excuses at this moment. Her mind needed to focus on the upcoming hearing. They stopped in front of Courtroom 5B. Mr. Moore said, "Judge Carter, this is your courtroom." "Once again, I deeply regret. That's enough." "Mr. Moore," Angela interrupted, her tone gentle yet firm. "Please return to your duties. I'll be fine." Mr. Moore nodded, stepping back. "Yes, ma'am. Wishing you a successful hearing." His eyes showed genuine remorse as he turned to leave. Angela took a deep breath and straightened the folds of her black judicial robe. Through the slightly ajar wooden door, she could hear faint voices inside. People were likely waiting for the presiding judge to appear. "It's time," Angela told herself, trying to push aside the image of the security guard from earlier. She gripped the door handle, her palm still trembling slightly. For a moment, she recalled her mother's words, "Always hold your head high. Your worth isn't determined by how others see you." Steeling herself, Angela pushed open the courtroom door. Inside, the room fell instantly silent. Every eye turned toward the petite woman in a solemn black robe entering. A bailiff near the door called out loudly, "All rise. The court is now in session. Honorable Judge presiding." Everyone in the courtroom stood. Angela felt the curious and surprised gazes following her every step. She approached the bench, sat down with composed dignity, and gave a slight nod. "You may be seated." Her voice rang out, commanding yet warm. Soft murmurs rippled through the spectator rows. A few lawyers exchanged astonished glances. They hadn't expected today's presiding judge to be a young black woman. Some recognized Angela Carter's name from brief news reports about her recent appointment. However, no one imagined that, just this morning, she had faced trouble at the security checkpoint. In the back row, attorney Sandra Williams, who had glimpsed the confrontation in the lobby, widened her eyes in recognition. She whispered, surprising her colleague beside her, "Oh my God, it's her." Seated at the bench, Angela quickly scanned the courtroom. Before her, the plaintiffs and defendants in the civil case were ready. Tense faces looked up, awaiting her instructions. Angela brushed aside the lingering sting of humiliation, assuming a professional, authoritative demeanor. She picked up the gavel and tapped it lightly. "The hearing is now in session. I am Judge Angela Carter, presiding over this morning's proceedings." Her resonant, commanding voice seemed to immediately dispel any lingering doubts. Angela smoothly handled the preliminary procedures of the case. She listened attentively to arguments from both sides, occasionally posing sharp, concise questions. No one could have guessed that, just moments before, this confident judge had endured a demeaning confrontation in the courthouse lobby. Yet deep inside, Angela felt a lingering wound. In brief pauses during the arguments, memories of the security guard's contemptuous gaze and scornful words flitted through her mind. She fought to push them away, focusing on the present. She reminded herself, I'm sitting here, in this position, proving that people like him were wrong. I must be strong to fulfill my duty. After more than an hour, the morning session concluded. Angela scheduled the next session for the afternoon to deliver the ruling after internal deliberations. When she announced the recess, people gradually stood and left the courtroom. Many curious glances lingered on the bench. A few court staff and lawyers approached to congratulate her on a smooth first session. Angela smiled and thanked them, but her mind remained preoccupied. As the courtroom emptied, a young female attorney hesitantly approached the bench. Judge Carter, she said softly. May I have a word with you? Angela looked up. It was Sandra Williams, her face showing a hint of concern. Angela nodded. Yes, please speak. Sandra glanced around, waiting for the last few people to leave the room, then spoke quietly. I wanted to talk about what happened this morning at the security checkpoint. I happened to witness part of it. She hesitated. I'm truly sorry you had to endure that. Angela paused briefly, then gently shook her head. No, you have nothing to apologize for. Thank you for your concern. Sandra pressed her lips together, her expression indignant on Angela's behalf. I just can't believe they treated you that way. But she lowered her voice, as if afraid of being overheard. To be honest, this doesn't really surprise me. Angela frowned. What do you mean? Sandra glanced at the door, ensuring no one was nearby. Then whispered, I've seen that security officer act rudely to a few other people of color who came to the courthouse. He's notorious for being difficult, especially with black people or immigrants. Many of us attorneys have complained, but nothing seems to change. Once, my colleague Malik, an Arab-American lawyer, was detained and questioned by him for no reason, just because he brought a Quran for his client. We filed a complaint with the security management, but it was swept under the rug. Hearing this, Angela's heart sank. You're certain you reported it and got no response? She asked sternly. Sandra nodded. Yes. We sent a formal petition to court management a few months ago, after Malik's incident, but there was no clear reply. That Evans guy just kept working as if nothing happened, even more arrogant than before. Angela clenched her fists, suppressing a fresh wave of anger. Thank you for telling me, she said slowly. This information is important. Sandra hesitated. I'm just worried that if you take action, they might cover for each other again. I don't want you to face more trouble in your early days here. Angela met the young attorney's eyes, her gaze resolute. Precisely because I'm new here, I can't let this continue. Justice isn't just in the courtroom, it must begin at the courthouse door. If there's wrongdoing, it must be exposed. Sandra smiled faintly, admiring the judge's firmness. Yes, you're right. I wish you luck, and if you need the support of us attorneys, please let us know. Angela nodded in gratitude. As Sandra left, she leaned back in her chair, her mind churning. Clearly, the morning's incident wasn't an isolated case. If Evans had been abusing his position for so long without consequence, there had to be cover-ups or willful ignorance from his superiors. At that moment, the courtroom door opened again. Angela's judicial assistant, a young African-American man named David, entered, carrying a file folder. Judge Carter, are you all right? We heard something happen downstairs. Angela looked at her young assistant, his eyes full of concern. She smiled faintly to reassure him. I'm fine, David. Thank you. David continued bravely. We're all really upset about how you were treated. Some of the staff are planning to file a complaint with the court leadership. Angela shook her head. I appreciate everyone's concern, but I'll handle this myself. Could you do something for me? Yes, ma'am. Angela sat up straight, her tone solemn. I want to see all reports or complaints related to the conduct of security personnel in this courthouse over the past year. Could you contact the administrative office or the security department to obtain them? David looked momentarily surprised but quickly nodded. I'll try to get permission to access the records. Hopefully, they'll cooperate. Angela offered a faint smile. Thank you. We need to know what's really happening. As David left, Angela took a deep breath. Through the courtroom's window, the midday sun cast golden rays over Manhattan's skyscrapers. Her first morning here had been anything but peaceful, but it had revealed a dark crack in the system she had revered. Angela glanced down at the wooden gavel on her desk, the symbol of a judge's authority. She whispered to herself, Justice doesn't just reside in rulings, it lives in how people are treated within these walls. I cannot turn a blind eye. Her eyes shone with determination. She knew that from this moment on, alongside delivering justice in court, she had another mission to shine a light on the truth and fight for fairness, not just for herself, but for all who had ever been wronged like her. In the days that followed, Angela immediately began investigating the truth behind Security Officer Jack Evans's conduct. She didn't want to dismiss it as merely a case of individual rudeness. Her instincts told her there might be a deeper systemic issue at play. Her assistant, David, brought a file to Angela's office, compiled from the administrative department. As she flipped through the pages, Angela found 3 official complaints from lawyers and citizens regarding the behavior of court security personnel over the past year. Notably, all 3 complaints mentioned the same individual, J. Evans. The first case was from attorney Malik Hussein. As Sandra had mentioned, he alleged that security officer Evans harassed and insulted him for carrying a Quran. The response, penned by Chief of Security Richard Moore, stated, Investigation confirmed no serious misconduct by the officer. The incident was a misunderstanding due to security procedures. The case was closed without any disciplinary action. The second case involved a black woman named Lydia Brown, who reported being yelled at and abused by a security officer unnamed but matching Evans's description when she attended her son's court hearing. Brown wrote that Evans had searched her aggressively and made racially derogatory remarks. The security department's conclusion was brief. No evidence found to support the allegations. The officer has been reminded to conduct himself more courteously. The third case concerned a Latino man who complained about being called an illegal immigrant and being ejected from the premises by a guard at the entrance, despite having a court summons. The internal report concluded, the misunderstanding has been clarified with the complainant. The officer followed proper procedures. As Angela read each case, a slow-burning anger spread through her chest. Clearly, the complaints had been dismissed or downplayed. All 3 incidents pointed to the same name or matching description, Evans. David hesitantly said, It was quite challenging to obtain these files. Initially, they claimed they weren't archived or that I needed higher authorization. I had to involve the court clerk to gain access. Angela nodded in thanks and dismissed David. She sat silently in her office. The documents before her revealing a disturbing truth. Evans had a history of discriminatory behavior, and the security management under Moore seemed to have deliberately covered it up, minimizing the issues to avoid accountability. Angela couldn't remain passive. That afternoon, she decided to confront Richard Moore directly. She scheduled a meeting with him in her judicial office at the end of the workday. When Moore entered, his expression was apologetic. He bowed his head, saying, Judge Carter, I want to apologize once again for the incident the other day. We've temporarily suspended Evans and will impose appropriate disciplinary measures. Angela sat behind her desk, her face cold and stern. Mr. Moore, she began, her voice calm yet sharp. I've reviewed the complaints concerning Officer Evans. It appears this isn't his first instance of misconduct. Moore's face paled slightly. Ah, yes, there have been a few previous reports. But we've addressed them. Really? Angela interrupted, her eyes reflecting sternness. She picked up the file, selected a page, and read aloud. Attorney Malik Hussein accused Evans of harassment. Your conclusion, no serious misconduct by the officer. Then there's Mrs. Lydia Brown's complaint about aggressive searching and racial slurs, which you dismissed due to lack of evidence. How do you explain these matters? Moore awkwardly pulled out a chair and sat down. Judge, those cases were difficult to verify. Evans's account differed from the complainant's. At the time, we lacked clear witnesses. No witnesses. Angela raised an eyebrow. To my knowledge, a colleague of Evans witnessed Malik's incident and filed a report. Sweat dotted Moore's forehead. Ah, that guard stated Evans conducted a routine check and didn't hear any derogatory remarks. Angela slammed the file onto the desk. Mr. Moore, I'm concerned that your staff may be dishonest, or perhaps your entire complaint handling process is flawed. Her voice rose. 3 serious complaints, all dismissed, and the result, Evans continued his duties, continued abusing his authority, until I became a victim myself. Do you grasp the severity of this situation? Moore lowered his gaze. Judge Carter, I sincerely apologize. Perhaps I placed too much trust in my staff. Evans has been with us for years, with a previously good record. I didn't anticipate such discriminatory behavior from him. Angela stared intently at him. Truly unexpected. Or did you choose to ignore it to avoid trouble for your department? Admitting to discrimination would invite scrutiny and investigations. Were you afraid of repercussions? Afraid it would tarnish your department's record, leading you to overlook warnings about Evans? No, Moore stammered. But his averted eyes betrayed his guilt. I just thought they were minor misunderstandings. Minor misunderstandings, Angela repeated, her tone stern. You call a security officer's abuse and insults towards multiple individuals minor misunderstandings, leading to a federal judge being humiliated at the courthouse entrance. Moore turned pale, speechless. Angela exhaled, striving to maintain composure. Mr. Moore, I won't let this matter be swept under the rug. I will report the entire incident, along with this evidence, to the Chief Judge of the District Court, and if necessary, to the Federal Judicial Committee. A racist officer is bad enough. A cover-up network is even worse. Justice must be served. Upon hearing this, Moore looked up abruptly, alarmed. Judge, please reconsider if this becomes public. It will severely damage our court's reputation. If the press gets involved. Angela's expression hardened. Are you concerned about the court's reputation or your own position? Moore was at a loss for words. Angela stood up, gathering the documents into a folder. I don't wish to destroy the court's reputation, but a court only maintains its integrity by upholding justice. If there's wrongdoing, we must confront and rectify it. I suggest you cooperate with the upcoming investigation. It's the only way to atone for your mistakes. Moore sighed in defeat. Yes, I will cooperate. The very next morning, Angela reported directly to the Chief Judge of the Federal District Court, presenting the entire matter along with the complaint files and testimonies from those involved. The Chief Judge, a stern, middle-aged man, listened attentively, his expression growing grave as he grasped the seriousness of the situation. He immediately convened an emergency meeting with the court's leadership and representatives from the Judicial Security Division. In the internal meeting, Angela recounted her experience and presented evidence from the other cases. Several officials couldn't hide their shock and outrage. A senior officer from the U.S. Marshals Service, representing the Judicial Security Agency, sternly stated that these incidents should have been reported to higher authorities rather than being handled internally. Clearly, there had been negligence. Richard Moore was summoned to explain himself before the meeting. With a trembling voice, he admitted to misjudging and inadequately handling the complaints against Evans. When questioned about why he hadn't reported any of the incidents to higher authorities, Moore mumbled, "I thought everything was under control. I feared it would affect our department's reputation." Such feeble excuses only intensified the heavy atmosphere. The chief judge sternly remarked, "Reputation doesn't come from hiding misconduct, Mr. Moore. It's the concealment that destroys credibility." Given the irrefutable evidence, the meeting swiftly concluded Officer Jack Evans had engaged in serious discriminatory behavior and abuse of power. Chief of Security Richard Moore was negligent, deliberately covering for his subordinate, and had compromised the complaint resolution process. The case would be forwarded to federal investigators to examine potential legal violations, such as abuse of power and civil rights infringements. That very day, an internal announcement was issued. Jack Evans was suspended indefinitely and would face criminal investigation. Richard Moore was temporarily relieved of his duties pending disciplinary investigation. The U.S. Marshals Service would assign personnel to temporarily oversee court security. As the announcement circulated throughout the courthouse, everyone was stunned. Some staff quietly applauded Angela for her courage in exposing the truth. Lawyers like Sandra and Malik, who had previously suffered injustices, breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that justice was finally being served in the very place where fairness should prevail. Angela herself, after the intense meeting, stepped into the hallway feeling somewhat relieved. The afternoon sky outside the window was a clear, lofty blue. She felt as though light had finally penetrated the long darkened corners. Her battle wasn't over, but she had taken the first step, exposing a decaying cover-up network within the system. The light of truth had begun to shine, and it would blaze even brighter in the days to come. The scandal at the Southern District Federal Court in New York quickly captured attention, not just within the judiciary, but also across public discourse. For the first time, people heard about a black female judge being insulted by her own court security personnel and her bravery in exposing an entire system of cover-up and misconduct. Major New York newspapers, from the New York Times to the Washington Post, covered the story. Television networks joined in, praising the courageous woman who dared to demand justice within the very House of Justice. Facing public pressure and the call to clean up the system, the leadership of the Southern District Federal Court and the U.S. Marshals responsible for judicial security swiftly announced a series of robust reforms. First, a completely new process for receiving and handling complaints was issued. Instead of allowing the security department to handle matters quietly as before, all reports of misconduct by security officers and bailiffs would now be forwarded directly to an independent committee. This committee would include representatives from the judiciary, legal community, and members from the Office of the Judicial Inspector General. They would ensure all complaints are investigated objectively and impartially. Second, all court security personnel were required to undergo mandatory training on anti-discrimination and public service conduct. Real-world scenarios and role-playing exercises were introduced to make employees acutely aware of the consequences of disrespecting citizens. They were expected to internalize the principle Everyone who walks through the courthouse doors must be treated with dignity and equality. Third, the recruitment and performance evaluation processes for the security team were reviewed. New applicants would undergo rigorous screening for attitude and professional ethics. Those exhibiting racial bias would be disqualified. For current staff, individual records were examined. Anyone with a history of negative complaints would be placed under special supervision. Repeat offenses would result in immediate removal from the force. Additionally, the court installed more surveillance cameras at the security checkpoint and waiting areas, ensuring that every interaction between security staff and the public would be recorded. This provided objective evidence in case of disputes and prevented distortions of the truth as had previously occurred. The chief judge of the district court, along with U.S. Marshals representatives, held a public press conference before the cameras. The chief judge solemnly stated, "We apologize for allowing this regrettable incident to occur. The courthouse is where every citizen seeks justice. No one should ever face discrimination here. We are committed to changing and ensuring the courthouse is a safe and fair place for all." He also expressed gratitude to Judge Angela Carter for her steadfastness and courage. "We are proud to have a colleague like her, who reminded us all of the judiciary's noble mission." Angela stood humbly at the edge of the conference room, silently observing the proceedings. She didn't seek praise. What she hoped was that the promises of reform would truly be realized. Still, she couldn't hide a swell of emotion as the chief judge mentioned her name with genuine respect. She remembered how painful it had been that morning when she was driven away at the courthouse entrance. Now, in that very place, positive changes were beginning to take root. That evening, images of Angela appeared briefly on the news, a black female judge with a determined gaze. Many media outlets dubbed her the new beacon of justice, a woman who dared to challenge injustice to uphold what is right. Within the African American community, Angela Carter's name became a source of pride. Civil rights organizations sent letters of congratulations. One letter from the Association of Black Lawyers read, "Judge Carter's story is a reminder that the fight against injustice can take place even within the most hallowed halls. Thank you for turning your pain into a catalyst for reform, so that those who follow will not suffer the same fate." As for Jack Evans, after his suspension, he was swiftly prosecuted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) for civil rights violations and unlawful assault due to his aggressive actions toward Angela, deemed as assault. It was rare for a courthouse security officer to face criminal charges, underscoring the gravity of the situation. Simultaneously, Richard Moore faced an intense internal investigation. Public speculation suggested he might resign to take responsibility. In the weeks that followed, Angela quietly continued her assigned caseload. However, the atmosphere at the courthouse changed dramatically. Each morning, as she passed through the security checkpoint, she noticed the guards now greeted everyone with more respect. The temporary head of security, a seasoned officer from the U.S. Marshals, personally oversaw the screening process on several occasions to ensure proper conduct. Black attorneys Angela met in the corridors smiled warmly and nodded at her with admiration. A young Latina clerk at the canteen information counter boldly said to her, "Thank you, Judge Carter. Your story has given us the courage to stand tall. Now, no one dares to look down on us." Angela gently squeezed the young woman's hand and replied, "Hold your head high. No one has the right to make you feel inferior." She understood better than anyone the sting of being looked down upon simply because of race or background. And she deeply appreciated the power of speaking up. The newly announced reform policies were just the beginning. Angela knew that transforming a culture would take time and continuous determination. But she believed that with the light of justice ignited, no darkness could conceal the truth for long. Through this ordeal, the entire courthouse staff seemed awakened. Conversations about racial bias once avoided began to surface openly. Other judges, inspired by Angela's example, paid closer attention to how the public was treated from the entrance to the courtroom. In judicial council meetings, Angela, though a newcomer, found her voice on equality and human dignity increasingly respected and valued. One afternoon, Angela received an email from the Office of the Federal Judicial Council. The brief message informed her that the council would consider issuing new nationwide guidelines for training court staff on diversity and inclusion, inspired by the lessons learned from the Southern District incident. Angela smiled with quiet satisfaction. Her painful experience had become the catalyst for positive change, not just locally, but across the nation. Gazing at the last rays of sunlight streaming through her office window, Angela silently gave thanks for the chance to turn adversity into meaningful action. The reforms had been born, and they would stand as a lasting legacy, one that she, through courage and righteousness, had helped forge for the judicial system. Several months after the upheaval at the Southern District of New York Federal Courthouse, the trial of Jack Evans commenced in the very building where he had once served. This time, Evans sat as the defendant, clad in a light blue prison uniform. His hands shackled before him. His gaunt face and averted gaze suggested that his time in detention had taken a toll on the once domineering security officer. Presided over by Judge Matthew Green, the trial featured a carefully selected jury of 12 citizens. Federal prosecutors charged Evans with 2 primary offenses violating civil rights, specifically abusing his authority and discriminating against Judge Angela Carter based on race, and assaulting a federal official, citing his aggressive actions toward Judge Carter while she was performing her duties. Over the course of a week, the jury heard compelling testimonies. Judge Angela Carter took the stand, calmly recounting the events of that morning, how Evans had demeaned her, searched her belongings, discarded her judicial robe, and forcibly restrained her. Her steady voice conveyed both pain and determination, leaving the courtroom in a hushed silence. Some jurors appeared visibly moved as they listened to her account. Other witnesses, including attorney Malik Hussein, Sandra Williams, and Lydia Brown, shared their own experiences of Evans's abuse of power. Each testimony added to the portrayal of Evans as someone who routinely targeted vulnerable individuals under the guise of authority. Evans's defense team argued that he was merely performing his security duties and that any misjudgment was unintentional. However, internal emails presented in court revealed that a colleague had previously reported Evans for making racially charged remarks. Surveillance footage from the incident showed Evans discarding Judge Carter's robe and forcefully grabbing her arm, undermining claims of a misunderstanding. In closing arguments, the prosecutor emphasized Evans's betrayal of his oath to uphold justice, stating that his actions not only harmed Judge Carter, but also eroded public trust in the legal system. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before delivering a unanimous verdict guilty on all counts. Evans lowered his head as each charge was read, the reality of his convictions sinking in. Weeks later, during the sentencing phase, the courtroom was filled with observers, including media, legal professionals, and civil rights advocates. Before sentencing, Judge Carter addressed the court, expressing the deep humiliation she felt and her resolve to speak out against injustice. She emphasized that no one, regardless of position, is above the law. Judge Green then sentenced Evans to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. He highlighted the severity of Evans's misconduct and the necessity of upholding the integrity of the judiciary. As Evans was led away, He briefly met Judge Carter's gaze, perhaps in a moment of reflection. The courtroom slowly emptied, leaving behind a sense of closure and a reaffirmation of justice. Outside the courtroom, Judge Carter was approached by colleagues and supporters who commended her bravery. She acknowledged their support, emphasizing the collective effort required to confront and rectify systemic issues. The chief judge of the district court, present during the sentencing, praised Judge Carter's actions, noting that her courage served as a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance in preserving justice. Stepping out into the clear afternoon, Judge Carter felt a sense of relief. Justice had been served, and with it came the hope of a more equitable future. One crisp autumn morning, Angela Carter once again stepped into the Southern District of New York Federal Courthouse, a place that had become her second home. Today, there was no important trial. But the grand hall was unusually lively. A group of high school students was visiting as part of a civics education program. The students, their eyes bright with curiosity, attentively listened to the guide explaining the history and functions of the court. As Angela passed through the security checkpoint, a new young Latino security guard greeted her politely. "Good morning, Judge Carter." She smiled in response. Though several months had passed, he still remembered her, the woman who had helped change the face of this place. Angela also noticed how he warmly guided an elderly black woman who had asked for directions to a courtroom, treating her with utmost respect. A simple scene, yet it warmed Angela's heart. Change was becoming visible in the smallest things. Just then, a teacher in the student group recognized Angela and beamed. "Kids, look, that's Judge Angela Carter." Instantly, nearly 20 pairs of young eyes turned toward Angela with admiration. It turned out the students had learned about her story as a vivid illustration in their lessons on civil rights and equality. A shy black girl stepped forward, holding a notebook. "Judge Carter, may we have your autograph?" Angela was surprised and moved. She gently took the pen, signed her name on the blank page, and kindly asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Melody," the girl replied, her eyes sparkling. "I read about you in the newspaper. I want to become a lawyer, just like you." Angela knelt to Melody's eye level, gently placing her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Do you know how I became a judge? I was once a little girl just like you, with dreams and challenges, but I always believed in myself and worked hard. If you're determined, you can achieve it, and maybe even more than I did." Melody beamed and nodded enthusiastically. The other students gathered around, chattering their thanks. An Asian boy asked, "Ma'am, weren't you scared when you stood up to the bad guys?" Angela smiled and replied, "Of course, I was scared sometimes, but I thought about what was right, and that gave me the strength to overcome my fear. Remember, courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing the right thing, even when you are scared." The children chorused, "Yes, ma'am," before reluctantly saying goodbye when the teacher called them to move on. Angela watched them go, her heart filled with joy. She realized that to these children, she was not just a judge, she had become a symbol, a role model of courage and integrity. As time passed, Angela Carter continued her service as a federal judge. Complex cases and difficult decisions were weighed with the same unwavering belief in justice she had held from the beginning. But now, when faced with challenges, she was no longer alone. She carried with her the support of so many colleagues, the community, and the young generation following in her footsteps. Angela Carter's name gradually became legendary in local legal circles. People referred to her as a modern-day warrior for justice. A prestigious legal magazine even featured her on the cover, with the headline, "Angela Carter, a symbol of faith in justice." Every time she read those words, Angela thought of the blindfolded Lady Justice holding the scales, a symbol she revered. She had never seen herself as a symbol. But if her story could inspire someone to stand up against injustice, that was the greatest reward. At an awards ceremony hosted by the city's Bar Association, Angela was presented with the Torch of Justice Award for her contributions to promoting equality and integrity in the judicial system. As she stepped up to accept the honor amid thunderous applause, Angela humbly spoke, "I accept this honor not for myself, but on behalf of all who believe in justice. Justice is not an abstract concept or confined to law books. Justice exists through our daily actions, in how we treat each other, in our courage to stand up for what's right despite hardship. If my story holds meaning, it is proof that anyone, whether a judge, lawyer, or ordinary citizen, has the power to create positive change. All it takes is for us not to stay silent in the face of injustice." Angela's heartfelt words moved the entire room. That day, many came to shake her hand, from fellow judges to young law students. They thanked her for restoring their faith in their profession and mission. That night, as she returned home, Angela sat quietly by the window, gazing at the glittering New York night sky. She reflected on her journey, from the morning of humiliation to this triumphant evening. The gamut of emotions: pain, anger, resilience, and finally, overwhelming happiness seeing justice truly prevail. On her desk in the corner of the room, the judicial robe that had once been cast aside now hung with honor. Each time she donned it, Angela recalled her vow to uphold fairness, to serve justice for everyone, every community. Now, that vow carried even deeper meaning, for she profoundly understood that justice was not just in lofty rulings, but also in how the system treated each individual who walked through the courthouse doors. Angela closed her eyes and took a deep breath, savoring the peace. Her personal battle had closed with victory, but the journey of safeguarding justice continued. In her role, she would remain a shining torch, lighting the way for those facing injustice, giving them the courage to speak up. Outside the window, the night sky was deep and vast, but the stars continued to shine persistently. Angela smiled softly. She understood that she would not be the only star. Many more would shine, together, making the sky of justice radiant. And in that place, the image of Judge Angela Carter, from victim to hero, would forever remain an inspiration, a beautiful symbol of courage and integrity. Thank you for listening to today's story on Stories Around Us. We hope this story not only gave you a few reflective moments, but also inspired you to see the world around you with more understanding and compassion. No matter how small a story might be, it can still touch hearts and make a difference. If you found this story meaningful, please leave a comment below to share your thoughts. And don't forget to share this video with your friends. Who knows, it might inspire them too. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the upcoming stories waiting for you. Stories Around Us, where small stories tell the tale of a big world.